Charlie Kirk is somebody, obviously, you're okay sharing stage with. We talked about, we contrasted him to Nick Fuentes. Would you share a stage with Nick Fuentes?
No. In fact, I was on this Spaces on X, and he joined and I left. And so, yeah, there's a line, right? And I
what's the line?
I often grapple with that line myself, right?
What is the line for you, right? And I know it's provisional. We all fluctuate, but what is the line in general for you?
Yeah, line is when your main thesis is white supremacy, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, etc. Like that's what Nick's known for. That's what he does, right?
Right. He's a Nazi. He's like a literal Nazi.
I mean, I think he says he's a neo-Nazi, and I'll take him at his word, right? So, or he defends Nazis, right? That's good enough. No, I have no interest, right?
So I guess that's where I get confused. I saw this from 1023 where you called Trump a Nazi. But you share a stage with Trump and share a stage at an event that supports the movement of a Nazi. And what's the difference?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the title or if I actually said that, but it's in quotes, so maybe I did.
I mean, I have the video. I can play it.
Before we get into the actual debate from last night between Cenk and Marc Lamont Hill, you guys can see that the subscriber exodus has continued over at the Young Turks. And despite the standing ovation that Cenk received at America Fest, so far, it doesn't look like a single goddamn one of those clapping seals in the audience has joined the actual channel. Now we're down to 6.06 million subs. Cenk has now bled almost 40,000 subs since this began, since it really kicked in. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Cenk's theory of the case, maybe it's like a slow burn kind of thing where, in 2 years from now, he's more popular than ever and he's actually totally succeeded in pulling off this right-wing grift. He has a whole new audience. It's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but as of now, it does not appear that this has worked in any way whatsoever, other than just laundering the reputation of fascists like Charlie Kirk. It seems like that's all that's been accomplished. But growing TYT, no, it has not. It has not helped in that regard whatsoever. As we're about to hear from Cenk, he's going to acknowledge this in the debate from last night with Marc Lamont Hill. Pretty wild moment that we're about to see.
Absolutely. The only thing I'll add, Gavin, I think that Cenk might be savvy enough to know that this is not going to grow the YouTube platform of the Young Turks, but he's making a more cynical business play here that I want to pitch to you guys. I kind of hinted at it earlier, right? That he was auditioning for the Turning Point USA donor class, right? Not the people who were sitting in that audience. I think what he's gambling on, I think that from a business perspective, the final straw was actually the Tenet media scandal when he realized how much money was at play. And I think it really became clear to me when I watched him sit in that room with Tim Pool and I saw in Cenk's face the look of a broke guy. Nobody knows the look of a broke guy better than me. Many times I've sat at the table like Mike McDermott and got my clock cleaned. Okay, I've been broke more times than I've woken up in the morning. I swear to God. But I saw that look, that familiar face of a broke guy who was really not sure how he was going to make it work. And I realized in this grand game of capitalism, no matter how high you climb, there's always the look of a broke guy not too far from your eyes, right? And I think what he's decided is these really, really, really rich, really out of touch, 75 and up, they only care about how many subscribers he has. They're told, oh, look to the subscriber count, right? That's how old heads that don't understand the business think, okay? And that's what Cenk wants to exploit now. He says, okay, my time of honesty is over. Now it's my time of retirement. Now it's my time of cashing in, selling out, okay? This is the Victory Lap Tour. This is my Speaker Box album. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah. And he claimed in this interview with Marc Lamont Hill that he did not get paid to do that appearance at America Fest. Sounds fishy to me. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's lying. I'm not going to say that he literally straight up lied about not getting paid. But you're 100% right, Zach. What this is his entry into that world. And traditionally, yeah, you do get paid to appear at something like CPAC, to be on one of those lineups. So if he keeps going in this direction, 100% that's where the money is. 100% that's where the money is, and not just from conferences like CPAC and America Fest and all that kind of shit, but also the sponsorships. Yeah, it was on that Tim Pool episode where Tim Pool says, "Yeah, dude, it's actually not rare at all for me to get paid $50,000 to do an ad read one time on my show." And you could see in Cenk's face, as you said, like, ooh, I could use.
Gavin also knows
50K.
the look of a broke man. He's seen it in the mirror.
For sure. But it's unfortunate because, as we've talked about so many times, TYT didn't used to have to rely on that sort of financial corruption, that sort of corporate sponsoring. Before the Jeffrey Katzenberg investment, where it all started to go downhill, they were a self-sustainable channel. You know, they had a lot of employees, but they actually made revenue from their audience because people were dedicated to the mission. They wanted to chip in. They wanted to help build something bigger. So, you know, it's a shame. And that's part of why we talk about this so much. It's like if Bernie Sanders ran again in 2028, but he's like, this time we're taking corporate money and, you know, George Soros is going to be my #1 donor. And, you know, whoever, that's the first donor that came to mind.
Medicare for all, problematic. Yeah, it has nothing to do with our shared faith. That was not the point that my co-host was making. It had nothing to do with that.
Exactly.
Anyway.
But yeah, let's get into this, guys. Shout out to Marc Lamont Hill. I watched the majority of this interview live on his show last night. I thought he did a pretty good job. I have a few notes, but overall, I think he did a pretty good job. And this was an interesting exchange.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What do you say to the person who says, and I'm not doing the hypothetical journalist thing, people in the comments have said it. I just don't know, you know, specifically their names, but you can scroll through and see. Yeah, you're not getting money from this directly, but you know what side of the, you know, bread is buttered. You know that taking the positions you're taking will have you on talk shows. Your views will go up on the channel. You'll get more, you know, you'll get a wider audience. If the right wingers who love to click on stuff and love to watch media, that this is still a strategic career move.
Totally and utterly absurd. So number one, if you want to be real, of the two things, the theories that I talked about earlier about us, we're right-wing grifters and getting money for it. Oh, your audience is dying off, etc. We can't be both, right? Well, the reality is this has cost us a good number of paid subscribers. We're not unaware of that. And it has cost us in terms of the live show, etc. The number is there. We're not unaware of that. We're actually doing something really bold and courageous, which is that we're willing to risk our not only money, but the loyalty of our audience to do what we perceive to be the right thing. And Mark, it's the same exact thing I did when I challenged Obama from the left. Tons of paid subscribers left, audience left. No, Obama's a saint. You can't do that. And that was early on in his administration after we helped him so much to get elected against McCain. We do not do audience capture, and we challenge our own audience, open minds, open hearts. So the challenge, this idea of grifting, I know where it comes from. Again, I'm not saying, oh my God, nobody's ever going to do that or nobody's ever done that. No, people have done that. I get it. I get
it every day.
Yeah, but in order to make that charge, and if somebody in the audience is concerned, that's totally fine, right? But when
no, it's not, Cenk. Don't act like you're above criticism when it comes from your audience. We've watched you and Anna both melt down to random YouTube members who begin their question with, hey, I've sent $5 every month for the last 6 years. I've noticed a little bit of a pivot. And then you go on and gaslight them. To be fair, Cenk is a lot more well-receiving of critics on air at TYT than Anna Kasparian has been. She's the one that really lost it. But he has had absolutely no good faith response to any of his actual critics who worked with him at TYT, right?
It's completely ridiculous of Cenk to act like, oh, well, because so far my grift has completely failed, therefore it's not a grift. No, dude, that just means that you're bad at doing what you're trying to do. You've totally failed. That's why, yeah, TYT has bled subscribers. It's, you know, resulted in all this backlash, not just from people like us, but from your own goddamn employees. Cenk, people like Francesca, who's grilling your ass right now on her show. So yeah, no, it's not just that like you're doing the right thing and it's costing you financially. No, people saw through you and they're making you pay by unsubscribing from the Young Turks.
100%.
Other left-wing hosts say they already have done that. That's just a lie. And so that is deeply problematic that we have a bunch of hosts out there saying things that aren't even close to true. They never checked. They never asked. At least you asked, Mark. And I appreciate you asking. So people have to be concerned about where they're getting their news. And unfortunately, some folks on our side also have bad intent.
I think that's
When he says some folks on our side have bad intent, he's talking about humble little podcasts like the Vanguard. Dude, if you're getting smoked by a show out of a bedroom and you have 75 employees in a studio called the Poly Market Studio, okay, maybe a bigger fish to fry. Maybe it's actually a you problem. Maybe it's something that you fucked up. Maybe it's not us being bad faith actors. Okay, maybe people are pointing out a real problem that you should correct.
Charlie Kirk is somebody, obviously, you're okay sharing stage with. We talked about, we contrasted him to Nick Fuentes. Would you share a stage with Nick Fuentes?
No. In fact, I was on this Spaces on X, and he joined and I left. And so, yeah, there's a line, right? And I
what's the line?
I often grapple with that line myself, right?
What is the line for you, right? And I know it's provisional. We all fluctuate, but what is the line in general for you?
Yeah, line is when your main thesis is white supremacy.
Oh, Charlie Kirk.
Racism.
Oh, Charlie Kirk.
Anti-Semitism.
Charlie Kirk.
Islamophobia.
Charlie Kirk.
Etc. Like, that's what Nick's known for. That's what he does, right?
Charlie Kirk.
He's a Nazi. He's like a literal Nazi.
I mean, I think he says he's a neo-Nazi, and I'll take him at his word, right? So, or he defends Nazis, right? That's good enough. No, I have no interest, right?
So I guess that's where I get confused.
What? No, I
saw this from 1023 where you called Trump a Nazi. But,
yeah,
but you share a stage with Trump and share a stage at an event that supports the movement of a Nazi. And what's the difference?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the title or if I actually said that, but it's in quotes, so maybe I did.
He says it on a Crystal Kyle and Friends interview. Conveniently enough, Gavin, it's the same clip that's viral on YouTube that includes him saying he will take Super PAC money as president.
I mean, I have the video. I can play it.
Yeah, okay. No. If you say it, I know that some people are sending around videos. I believe it. So what I try to do is I tried not to call him a Nazi or Hitler, but I did.
Did you think he was a Nazi, or were you being hyperbolic?
No. I must have been hyperbolic then, because I never.
You never thought Trump was a Nazi.
No.
So then I'm even more confused, because this conversation you're talking about how we shouldn't flamethrow and call people names
again
and call everybody who's
pausing it. It's hilarious. Again, it's like, okay, so why should we believe you now? Why should we believe what you're saying now? Because when you were running for president, literally like a year or less ago, you went on podcasts and said that Donald Trump is a Nazi. That was your unambiguous claim. It was incredibly, it was like stated in the most blatant way possible. Trump is a Nazi. And now here you are, less than a year later, and you're like, well, did I say that? But I didn't mean it. Hell, of course I didn't mean that. I mean, I say things all the time. What do you think this is? But again, you literally called Trump a Nazi. And now you're saying that the line in the sand is if the person is a Nazi. Oh, I won't talk to them if they're a Nazi. That's why I wouldn't share a Twitter space with Nick Fuentes, but I will with people that I was explicitly calling Nazis less than a year ago. It's crazy. If anything, the Charlie Kirks of the world, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, and the Donald Trumps of the world, they're actually just the more sophisticated version of Nick Fuentes. Like they basically share a lot of Nick Fuentes' ideology. They might not literally think that, Jews control the world or whatever the hell, idiotic conspiracies Nick entertains his audience with. But yeah, it's really not that much different. It's really not that much different. And like I said, the people that Cenk was on stage with are actually more sophisticated than Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes kind of gives a bad name to the right. He kind of gives a bad face to the right because he just rips the mask right off. He's like, yeah, I'm a Nazi. I hate Jewish people. I think the Holocaust was based, whatever. Like, that's what he says. Obviously, Charlie Kirk's not going to say that. Obviously, he's not that bold. But again, it's just as nefarious because those people actually have power. Nick Fuentes is just some loser who fucking, sits in his room waiting to tase a woman who knocks on his door. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people actually have power. Turning Points USA is actually one of the biggest, recruitment arms for the Republican Party. They do a lot of the grunt work, a lot of the groundwork when it comes to actual organizing on the local level. But that person's not nefarious. Nick Fuentes is. That's crazy.
Racist or you don't even want us to call actual white supremacists. Why would you call them a Nazi?
No, I'm saying that I must have that must have been hyperbolic because I tried hard not to call him a Nazi, so that must have been a mistake. So So
backpedaling so
and
hard.
here's my distinction, and I've explained this many, many times. I'm worried about Trump's fascism because he showed it to us. So on January 6th, but before January 6th as well, he did a fake elector plot. He then agitated people to go bomb rush the Capitol.
And once again, most people at this point use Nazi and fascist interchangeably. Let's be honest. So yeah, literally a week before Donald Trump was elected, Cenk was calling him a fascist. He pushed back on Anna in pretty glorious fashion, kind of shut her down because she was like, is he really a fascist? And Cenk was like, well, what do you think fascism means? What's your definition of fascism? Because Trump certainly fits mine, right? Well, guess what, Cenk? Fascist, Nazi, most people use them interchangeably. When you call Trump a Nazi, people don't literally think that means Trump goes out there wearing a swastika. They don't literally think that he's like doing exactly what Adolf Hitler did. He's not actually sending Jewish people and gypsies to concentration camps or whatever. Like, at least not yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, no one thinks that Trump is literally, by definition, a Nazi. But saying that, yeah, of course I called him a fascist, but I didn't go so far as to call him a Nazi. That's just semantic garbage.
Capitol. The point was to delay the proceedings so he could have his fake electors steal the election. So I've been super clear about that. That's why I hated Trump. That's why I fought tooth and nail against Trump. So those are fascist tendencies, and I have no problem calling it fascist. But it is not Nazi. Nazi is a completely different thing where they killed 13 million people and had death camps. Trump didn't have death camps. He didn't kill those people. But for the right,
neither Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I remember I needed Nick Fuentes, but you're still comfortable calling him a Nazi.
No, but Nick Fuentes still he defends the Nazi.
Oh, you're only a Nazi if you call yourself a Nazi. If you don't actually have the armband tattoo,
Yeah. Also, what the fuck is the main objective of the Republican Party? What was the number one campaign promise that Donald Trump made? Mass deportations. Now, you can make some economic argument for why that's necessary, but let me tell you, I think there were some mass deportations under Adolf Hitler as well. I remember hearing a lot about, people being abducted in the middle of the night and, hauled off on trains to various camps. Doesn't that kind of sound like mass deportation? Is it really that much different?
Dare I say it was justified by the economy?
Yeah, exactly. They use the very similar justifications. They gaslit a bunch of poor people that were downtrodden after World War I into thinking that all of these Jews and Romani people and homosexuals, etc., were the issue. And that for that reason, they all had to be sent away in the night. And that's literally the same shit that Donald Trump and people like Charlie Kirk and all these fascists on America First stage have said just about immigrants. Again, it's really not that much different. And is it really that much? I mean, I'm not saying it's literally the same thing as sending someone to a concentration camp, obviously. But if you come from an incredibly impoverished, like if you're from like Haiti or something and they just send you back there, I mean, that's basically a fucking death sentence. Let's be honest.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. And if you put it in those severe terms, it makes it a lot harder for people to grapple with. Actually, if I could share a quick anecdote, my sister has a very dear friend that's in America with a visa from Haiti, right? My sister works in an office where there's a lot of Haitian folks. And this woman she just gave birth to her baby. Okay. She was pregnant on the day that Trump got reelected. My sister called me because she found her legs, or, whatever, we talked about it. But she has this like 4-pound baby, 10 months old, or 4 pounds, 10 ounces, whatever the fuck it is. She just gave birth to it. Right. And my sister's like fucking shit scared that her family's gonna get sent back to Haiti, right? And obviously that lady's fucking shit scared that her husband and all this stuff are gonna get sent back to Haiti. And my grandma and grandpa, both fucking Trump supporters, right? My sister's like, oh, I'm gonna make you reckon with this. I'm gonna tell you all about this fucking lady. I'm gonna tell you all about her life and how hard she's worked in this fucking country and how much she's contributed to the city of Boston. And also that she's fucking desperately scared that she's gonna get sent back to an island where we don't know what the fuck will happen to her. Well, Ruti has been told explicitly we can't keep her safe there, right? So if she goes back, it's like real life, real fast. Like, oh, you're in a gang-controlled like, you guys don't understand. When you leave America, like, we're all spoiled bastards, okay? I remember I got shaken down by the Thai police one time. I thought I was gonna die because there are a bunch of dudes in military uniforms and they come out and put a fucking, and I'm high as shit, okay? So now you put yourself in a real situation, right? And I'm a Euro-American backpacker, okay? You're a person on the ground. It's a horrible situation. And they're like, oh, well, that's not going to happen to her. She's got a great story. And it's like, no, that's not how the fucking world works. Everybody has a great story. All of these people are human beings. And there are consequences to the ruthless dictators and wannabe fascists that we put in power.
So that's a giant difference.
So that's the line for you. You have to explain. And I agree, by the way, that Nick Fuentes is an evil person. He's a Nazi, etc. You're saying the person, anything short of self-identifying as a Nazi and openly supporting Hitler, you're okay sharing the stage with, it sounds like.
Again, Mark, you're framing it in a way that sounds extreme. So it's.
I want you to consider that maybe what you're saying is extreme, though. I mean, I might be describing exactly what you're saying. It just doesn't sound as good coming back to you.
So no.
That's so important that Marc got that line off, everybody. He held the mirror back up to Cenk, and when Cenk tried to weasel out, he said, no, dude, this is what you're saying. You just don't want to hear it said back to you because deep down you know it's immoral and wrong. But up here, you're able to negotiate it with yourself and make it sound nice and clean. And that's exactly what's happened to all of media this second time around with Donald Trump. They're actually all super stoked he got reelected because they know they can pay their bills for 4 more years. Well, at least that's what they thought until MSNBC cratered.
No, not at all, Mark. So a couple of things. Benjamin Netanyahu is a terrorist. He's a war criminal. He committed genocide. But I would share a stage with him because of all the things that we discussed before. The ability to have the other side have a voice.
What? So
whether you.
So Nick Fuentes is a red line, but not Benjamin Netanyahu. What the fuck? This is so incoherent. I'm sorry. The more Cenk tries to explain his logic, the less logical it sounds. So Nick Fuentes, who says he's a Nazi and clearly is, that's a problem. But Benjamin Netanyahu is literally doing a genocide, literally the modern day Adolf Hitler. No, I'm not even kidding. If you want to pick a fucking modern day Adolf Hitler, it's 100% Netanyahu. And Cenk's like, oh, but I would be there to, push back.
Crazy.
Don't challenge you. Challenge screaming, you challenge whispering. At least I give the Palestinians a voice by being on that stage. When I go on the right-wing shows, at least I give the left wing a voice by being there. And so if you frame it as, oh, look at Cenk Uygur happily going on stage with a terrorist Netanyahu, then I seem like a bad guy. If you say Cenk Uygur giving voice to the Palestinians by being on the same stage as Netanyahu, I seem like a good guy. It's all in the framing. It's in the framing. So when you get to the
I disagree. It's not just in that suggests that your behavior is neutral and the framing is what makes it right or wrong. I'm saying that you can actually make different choices on that stage.
So Mark, then let me ask you back. So
Sure.
Do you think that as we were talking about populism on both sides and rebelling against the establishment, and that was the theme of it that was supposed to last about 20 minutes, that I should have done a sidewinder and derailed the whole thing by attacking him on his previous quotes about black
people? Not necessarily, no. But again, that's not necessarily the only way to be courageous in that space. That's not the only way to be principled in that space. That's not the only way to do important resistance work in that space. You could.
And as you've mentioned previously on the show, this is a walk that Marc Lamont Hill has walked. This is a dude that has put his values first. This is a dude that's doing a show on YouTube instead of mainstream cable because he decided to put his principles ahead of his profit, something that Cenk is no longer interested in.
Yep.
Pull up an old quote, or you could speak to the bigger system. You could speak to the bigger establishment. It's one thing to give you a concrete example. You sat on that stage and said, we all, the left and the right, we all hate establishment media. We can agree that establishment media needs to go. Everybody claps. That's a great feel-good moment. But again, those people who leave that room.
This is towards the end of that main timestamp. It kind of goes off the rails here, and they get into a long and they kind of lose the plot, frankly, for the next 20 minutes. This gets into this weird semantic argument about the media and stuff that's not as interesting to me. There is another moment towards the end that might be worth reacting to.
Breaking down some walls. So, but
do you believe that you and Charlie Kirk are opposite sides of the same coin? Do you believe that you and Charlie Kirk are opposite sides of the same coin?
Well, look, that's a good question because I don't hate white people and I don't say anything against white people in general. I would never say like, hey, if I go to a plane and there's a white pilot, I'm worried. All right. So it's not exactly right that we're the same side.
Exactly. That's why it's not fair to say, well, they say the same thing about me. Well, y'all ain't the same. I also think it's interesting that
they think it's the same, Mark, but they do think it's the same.
But it's okay to say they're wrong. But also, I just to be a little petty, I appreciate that you saying you're not like Charlie Kirk because you don't hate white people. You accept that Charlie Kirk hates black people, which I appreciate. I just think it's wild and bizarre that you can accept that he hates black people and don't think he's a white supremacist. That's just weird to me. But just I know you got to go.
Such an unhelpful term. I can't stand it.
As a black person,
this is what's crazy to me. I'm sorry, we'll let Marc go off in a second. But how is being a white supremacist? How is it called? Like, this is something that is such like fucking American brain rot, okay? That it's somehow more offensive to be called a racist. Like, it's more wrong to call someone a racist than it is for them to actually be a racist. Like, I'm sorry it hurts your feelings, asshole. You're the racist. Cenk literally cited an example of his blatant white supremacy where he's like, if I get on an airplane and I don't have a white pilot, like, I feel iffy about it.
As a black person, I can tell you, I find it unhelpful that someone could acknowledge someone hates black people, but thinks the most unhelpful thing is calling them a white supremacist. I mean, can you imagine?
No, that's not helpful, brother. Because I could show you 100 Islamophobes that are hardcore Islamophobes, but me calling them Islamophobes is not helpful. It's never going to break through to them. You've got to go to a different strategy. So when I go to a different strategy, instead of going, hey, I wonder how that'll turn out, which I think you're basically doing, which I appreciate, and that's why this is an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I've got other folks saying, no, tear them down, tear them down. Don't ever talk to anyone on the other side. They're white supremacists. They're this, they're that. That if you go in the room with them, they instantly.
Nobody is saying that. We just don't want you to go in the room and kiss their ass and suck their cock and give them a reach around.
Gain credibility and legitimacy, and now you've helped them. Help them how, man? That's, I don't know, man. I just think the idea of not hating them being helpful to them is a very wrong way of thinking about it.
Well, I think one way, and I know we got to go. I think again, it's not to me about going in the room. It's what we do in the room. But I think one way, the one thing a white supremacist hates being called is a white supremacist. The one thing that racists hate being called is a racist. And I think, and usually the people calling them racist or white supremacists are the people who are catching hell from them. And so I think it's sort of bizarre to police the language or to tell someone, for example, hey, that person that hates Muslims, it's not helpful for you to. That person that called you a towelhead, that person that called you a devil worshiper, that person that called you a pagan and a rapist, it's not helpful to call them Islamophobic. Oh.
And I would like to get your reaction to this, Gavin, because I feel like one of the big moral achievements that this country accomplished over the last 100 years was making everybody at least agree, in theory, definitely not in practice, but in theory, racism and white supremacism is wrong. Up until, still to this day in our country, right? But up until very recent history, it was just taken as gospel by most people, right? Most white people, I should say, right? But even some non-white people, because they were so brainwashed and propagandized, right? You've got, people of, non-black ancestry trying to make excuses for white supremacy. We see that in American culture as well. It's a very interesting dynamic. It's something that's permeated our culture in so many different ways that even somebody who would be negatively impacted by white supremacy in one instance is positively impacted in another. And they say, oh, well, I guess I'll take the little benefits that I can get. But because of the struggle of folks who did such a great job organizing the American public and forcing them to reckon with the sheer inhumanity of white supremacy, right? Of the Jim Crow South, of all of that. They won the moral argument that nobody should be a white supremacist. So now what we're constantly facing is gaslighting from folks. Oh, I'm not a white supremacist. Oh, I'm not a racist. Because the argument's already been won that being a racist is bad, right? So now they're all just on the bike all the time trying to disguise themselves, trying to be racist covertly, instead of just acknowledging what they are, because everybody on a surface level understands that prejudice on the basis of race, creed, religion, whatever, is superficial and immoral.
Yeah, and again, also as I talked about, basically just describing disguising their white supremacism and racism as like some economic prescription. Like, oh, it's not that I want to live in only a country with white people, but for the sake of the economy, got to get all these brown people out. And that is the central message of the Republican Party. It's a bunch of justifications for the mass deportation of everyone who's not white, everyone that doesn't look white. That's the point. Trump said Haiti is a shithole country and that we should accept more immigrants from Sweden. Why do you think that is? Because the people in Sweden are white, obviously. Literally, as Cenk had this conversation, the entire MAGA movement was melting down on Twitter because they realized Elon Musk has hired a bunch of immigrants that work for Tesla. You know what I'm saying? And now they're calling him a traitor. Why? Because he employs people that aren't white Americans. So yeah, it's 100% central to the movement. And to act like that's not the case, and to act like that's not something that we can even talk about, is just gaslighting. It's total madness. And that's not to say that every single Republican voter is a white supremacist. I think that most people understand that too. Like, say, you're at Thanksgiving or Christmas with your grandpa, and he's like, all this hip hop music, there's too much of it. I remember back in the day when there was more country music or some shit, like, I don't know, something like that. That doesn't necessarily mean your grandpa's a fucking white supremacist, obviously. Just because someone repeats something that's kind of racist sounding doesn't necessarily make them a white supremacist, even if they do vote Republican. I don't necessarily think that's the case. But the people that Cenk is talking to at America First rally, America Fest, or whatever the fuck, those people are 100% racist. Those people are 100% white supremacists. They've literally made an entire broadcasting career off of preaching that shit. It's not controversial. It's a matter of fact.
Oh, that person that called you a nigger? Oh, no. It's not helpful for you to call them a white supremacist. That feels paternalistic and almost and is disrespectful to the people who are victimized by it. You may think it's unhelpful, but I actually don't think it's your place or anyone else's place. It's like it'd be like saying, I don't think it's helpful to. It would be like me saying to women, I don't think it's helpful for you guys to call Trump sexist or misogynistic. I don't think that's helpful, ladies. I mean, come on. Can you at least see why somebody would find that a problematic claim for you to make?
No, hold on. You're conflating two things that is super unfair.
No.
Because you can call them anything you like. I'm not stopping you from calling them. I'm not stopping women from calling them whatever they want. I'm just telling you what I'm doing, right? And in fact,
hey, bro, I don't care if you want to take up arms against these people. I want to get their money, man. These guys rolling in the dough right now. So you might have your whole moral convictions. You might have, this instinct in you that tells you to fight for what's right and just in this world. But me, brother, I'm out for number one. I'm out for TYT.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's so stupid. Yeah, it's like, you obviously are telling people not to say that, Cenk. He says, I'm not telling you what to say, but you just said it's unhelpful to do this. You just said it's unhelpful to call people that when that's what they are. You literally just told people it's unhelpful to accurately identify folks as, again, exactly what the fuck they are. That's completely and utterly fucking ridiculous, just from a matter of like honesty. I'm sorry, Cenk, but you're not a presidential candidate. You're not an advisor to the Democratic Party. I kind of understand the argument. I think Cenk makes it at one point in this interview. I kind of understand the argument that, like, should Kamala Harris call Donald Trump a white supremacist? Probably not. Or, fill in the blank with whoever is the Democratic nominee. I think there's a reasonable case to be made there that, whoever the next Democratic nominee is probably shouldn't call all of MAGA a white supremacist movement, because that probably could turn off a lot of MAGA voters that potentially could be persuaded to vote Democrat. But Cenk, you're not a freaking advisor to the Democratic Party. You're a member of the media whose role up until this point has been to speak truth to power. That's what you brand yourself as. You call yourself a populist who stands up to the establishment. Guess what? That's different than being a political strategist. You're not on the payroll of the DNC. Your job is not to get more Democrats elected. Your job is to speak truth to power. And guess what? Power right now, the establishment, it's MAGA. And it's time to be fucking honest about him. Because like I said, it's not your job to win Kamala Harris votes or some shit. It's your job to be honest and tell people the fucking truth.
No. You're not doing that.
Hold on, Mark.
That's not what you said. No, I'm calling you on the contradiction. Hold on.
No, hold on, Mark.
That's not what you said.
No, Mark.
You can backtrack, but that's not what you said. What you said was, I don't think it's helpful. I hear people doing this and it's not working. Let us try something different. Let us, not let me.
Mark. No. Okay, hold on. So number one, are you allowed to say whatever the fuck you want? Of course, right? I don't police anyone.
But you think it's unhelpful.
Yeah, but is it unhelpful? Yes. Okay. Now that's up to you. You want to be unhelpful because you're pissed. I get it.
What the fuck? He literally just relented on the point and he just grandstanded on.
Get it, especially if it affected you. So, like, if I go tell a fellow Muslim, hey, it's unhelpful to say the Jews are this or the Jews are that, and he goes, I don't want to hear that shit. Okay, my family got killed. I hear him, and he can say whatever he wants, right? But is it unhelpful? It is unhelpful. Okay, so for example,
I want to be clear that that's what you're saying.
Hold on, let me finish my thought. So
he's like, sure, I'll give you the rope to hang yourself, bro.
Hillary Clinton and everybody, and Kamala Harris, what did a lot of people do? They call Trump sexist, right? And I think that they have a lot of evidence on their side. But was it helpful? No, it wasn't helpful. It didn't work. Okay. So hold on, let me finish. So all I'm asking is, let me do my thing without assuming bad intent, without assuming that I'm helping. Because what I'm hearing from some portions of the left is, you're not.
Why do you get that privilege, Cenk? Why do we have to look at what you're doing and assume that it's in good faith when you did not look at what Jimmy Dore was doing and assume that it was in good faith? Because Jimmy Dore did the same fucking shit like 3 or 4 years ago, started cuddling up to all these right wingers like Tucker Carlson, going on their show for, patty cake softball bullshit. And then guess what? The next words out of his mouth are, you know what? I think we should really start talking about white supremacy. Literally, I'm not even kidding. Go back and roll the tape. He had Cornel West on his show and he starts hounding him, starts disrespecting the author of Race Matters and starts saying, you know what? I think you'd be a lot better at channeling populist energy if you talked less about racial issues and less about white supremacy. That was unironically exactly what Jimmy Dore said like a fucking year or two ago. Cenk is so late to the party. And he's doing it in such a sloppy way. At least Jimmy Dore, for years and years up until that point, laid the groundwork for what he was doing. But again, literally a month ago, Cenk was calling Donald Trump a fascist. Was that not helpful? Like, are you going to take some accountability then, Cenk? Are you going to say that, I guess we lost the election because we contributed to so much unhelpful discourse by accurately identifying fascists as fascists? Like, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, I think that what Cenk is kind of in the middle of right now is like he's lost at sea, right? And we've talked about this a lot, right? He keeps waiting for a buoy, and I think he's just throwing spaghetti at the refrigerator, guys. He didn't even agree with himself half the time in that exchange with Marc Lamont Hill, right? Like he said, whoa, you're being so unfair to me. I didn't say that anybody else shouldn't say they're white supremacists. And it's like, okay, well, you're going to grandstand on that. And then he's like, I just want to let you know you think it's unhelpful if anybody does it, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. That's what I said. It's like, well, what the fuck? That is you using your platform as a political analyst, as a commentator with 6 million subs about the only thing you can boast now. That like, oh yeah, hey, I think that's a misuse of your political energy to point out obvious racism unless some guy punches you in the face and calls you the N-word and spits in your eye. Are you kidding me?
Literally, yeah. Literally. I mean,
sorry.
Like, Trump is easily it's again, this is not anything controversial to say, but it is unironically true that Donald Trump is the most outwardly, blatantly bigoted person to ever achieve high office in my lifetime. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I mean, you can say whatever you want about any of the other war criminals and assholes and, pieces of shit, John McCain. Cenk used to fixate on the fact that John McCain said racial slurs behind the scenes, like not even in public. But he apparently used some slurs against, I think, the Vietnamese people or something like that, or the Korean people or something like that, right?
Sounds like something that like a 60-year-old white guy would say.
Right, especially one that fought in the freaking Vietnam War and shit, right? But, Cenk would talk about that. Trump says that shit out loud to massive crowds of 30,000 cheering white people and he wants to talk about how immigrants are poisoning the blood of the country and about how white girls are getting raped by black men who came over illegally. This is his message. What do you want us to call it? I'd love if it was something else. I'd love if Trump was preaching peace and love. I would be like, hell yeah, bro. I'm glad that, that assassination attempt changed you or whatever, but it fucking didn't. He doubled down. He ran an even more racist campaign this time. In fact, 2016 looks almost sanitized compared to the rhetoric this time around. If you go back to 2016, was it bad? Yeah. But like, they bring in the worst, the rapists, the criminals, it was almost like soft spoken.
It was dog whistly
in comparison to this round. This round, it was like, yep, we fucking hate Haitian people. We need to get them out of Ohio. They're eating dogs. They're eating cats. They're raping women. Like, this was his message. That is the number one message of MAGA.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The there.